Welcome to day 12 of Becoming a Solutions Architect.
In today's lessons, we are going to explore two different ways to provide an EC2 instance with permissions to access AWS services. And the first one is using access keys, a method that requires storing long-term credentials inside the instance. Two is using the IAM rules, a more secured temporary credential systems that allows an instance to assume permissions without storing credentials. So by the end of this lessons, we are going to understand the risks of using access keys inside EC2 instances, learn how IAM rules provide a more secure way to grant permission, and then configure an EC2 instance to access an S3 bucket using both methods. What at all are access keys? So access keys are long-term credentials used by AWS IAM users to authenticate programmatically to AWS services. Each access key consists of an access key ID, that is a public identifier, a secret access key, private key, like a password. So when using access key on an EC2 instance, we typically create an IAM user and then generate access key for the user, and then manually configure AWS CLI in the instance using the keys. How do access keys work inside an EC2 instance? Let's say we have an EC2 instance in the public subnet and we want it to interact with an S3 bucket. So we configure AWS CLI with access keys inside the instance. So what are some of the security issues with secret access keys? So long-term credentials are stored inside the instance and making them a security risk if exposed. Anyone with access to the keys can use them to access our AWS resources, and then the keys cannot be rotated automatically. They must be manually updated if compromised. So what at all are IAM rules? IAM rules can allow EC2 instance to assume temporary permissions without storing credentials. So instead of using a long-term access key, the instances assumes a rule, and AWS Security Token Service STS provide temporary credentials automatically. So how does IAM rules work in EC2? So an IAM rule is created with a required permission. The role is then attached to an EC2 instance, and then AWS STS generates temporary credentials which are automatically managed. This eliminates the risks of exposing long-term credentials. Now let's create an IAM rule for an EC2 instance. First, we go to the AWS Management Console and open IAM. Click on Rules, Create Rules. Under Trusted Entity Type, select AWS Services. We then choose EC2 as the trusted service. Click Next and attach a policy that grants access to S3, such as Amazon S3 read-only access, which have only read access, and then Amazon S3 full access, which have full control over the S3. And then name the rule EC2 S3 access and click Create Rule. Now, attaching the rule to an EC2 instance. Go to the EC2 dashboard, select EC2 instance that needs S3 access. Click Action, then Security, modify IAM rule, then select the EC2 S3 access rule from the drop-down, then click Update IAM rule. Now let's verify IAM rule permission in EC2. Once the IAM rule is attached, test its permission inside the instance. To confirm that no access key is needed, log onto the instance and check that no access key is configured. Now, dial AWS configure list. If IAM rules are being used correctly, the output should show access key not set, secret key not set. Since our EC2 instance has an AMI rule with S3 permissions, we can now access S3 without configuring credentials. So without AWS S3 LS, if the IAM rule is set up correctly, the output will list all the accessible S3 buckets. Now, understanding AWS Security Token Service (STS) in IAM rules. AWS Security Service Token Service (STS) issues temporary credentials for IAM rules instead of using permanent keys. STS provide 1. Temporary access keys, 2. Security access keys, and then session tokens. So how do EC2 instance use STS? It uses STS by making the instance request to the instance metadata service to retrieve STS credentials. 2. AWS automatically rotate these credentials as well, and then credentials are valid for a short duration, reducing security risks. To see if STS credentials is assigned to the instance, you can run this kill command and the output will show the temporary credentials like this on the screen. Now, why are IAM rules better than access keys? No credentials are stored inside the instance, which makes it more secured. Automatically rotated credentials, that's the STS, and it's also easier to manage permissions at scale. It also have the potential to reduce risks of credential leakage. So the best practices are always use IAM rules instead of storing access keys. Also grant only the minimum permission needed. Regularly review IAM rules policies to maintain security, and also use CloudTree logs to monitor rule usage.